Now it's just kind of when I get a chance to do this. And Shaggy had some time tonight, so we figured let's test this interview thing out. We're recording it, so if the audio does get messed up, we can still use it. So, anyways, the thing about Shaggy is that he's very, very good about computers. He has helped me tremendously. I think the first time I was in desperation because Blessing Boat was that week, and we worked on my computer and try to get things more efficient. And he did a phenomenal job. And he is my go-to tech person. So I know he's always a great friend. He has a great heart. He loves Jesus. So we're going to interview him. So,
Appreciate that.
Shaggy,
Yes, sir.
tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, getting near my 40s, which sucks. Live out in California.
Not by the
Uh,
fires.
been a Christian maybe 7 years. I don't know. I'm not one of those Christians that necessarily puts my date on one date. It was definitely like a journey getting to it. So I don't have one day where I was like, okay, I was saved then, you know?
Not a specific point,
Right.
but you do obviously accept Christ into your life and everything
Yes,
changed.
sir.
Exactly.
Saved by
So,
the blood of Jesus.
so I still remember mine, and I don't know the date either. I kind of in that realm of 14 years old. I remember living in Minnesota, and it was a church invite at a house church, I guess, and it was for youth. And I went because they passed out a flyer in into our neighborhood, and of course my mom is like, "You gotta go, you gotta go." So I went, and I accepted Christ through the fire and brimstone type of thing.
Type of
But
preaching.
exactly. So I knew hell was real and I didn't want to go. So I accepted Christ because of that. But then obviously a lot of things happened to me in high
Yeah,
school. So,
that's kind of similar with me in the sense that
hey, Jim.
I realized the devil was real, and
Yeah,
that's when I was like, well, if he's real, then
exactly.
is the other guy real? So I, read up on it, and every claim he made seemed to pan out and be true. So
That's
I
good.
definitely accepted it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what the, what do you call it? Can't think right now. The prophecies, right? That was made
Hmm.
in the Bible. Every one of them has come true. And the
That
likelihood.
hasn't happened yet, at least. There's still
Right,
some
exactly.
in the cards.
Yeah. But that's amazing, just to have a claim of what they say, just two of them to come into reality. And then you get into like 8, 10, 15, and it's like
They
mathematically
just keep
impossible.
stacking up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, so I got some questions for you that has something to do with the question of if you are a Christian who plays video games as a hobby but still loves Jesus. Sounds fun?
All right.
All right. So the first question is how do you balance your time between gaming and spiritual practices like prayer, reading the Bible, going to church?
So I do not attend a physical church. I'm in communist California. So a lot of the churches are extremely liberal here. I have attended church before in California. I was baptized as a little kid in my grandma's church. I don't know if that really counted for anything because I didn't really have to commit to anything, which was interesting. But as far as a balance goes, I multitask. When I'm playing video games, I usually have a sermon up on one of my other screens, and I'll be listening to stuff while I'm playing video games.
Hey, that's a good idea.
But obviously, I do it, when it's something serious, I'll sit down, outside of my gaming PC and watch something by myself. But when I'm gaming, I'm usually listening to something, whether it's politics or something uh, spiritual related, a sermon and such.
That's good. So you're always being fed, even though you're playing.
Yep.
So because you go to a non-physical building, how do you get fed besides, going online, looking at YouTube? I mean, do you have any pastors that you like? I know you like
Yeah,
a few of them here
I
on Twitch.
I have a certain following that I regularly watch. I'll watch pretty much every video they post. Mike Hoggard, Mark Carell, um, what's Robert Breaker, Generation 2434. I don't remember the numbers on it. So they have silly names that aren't usually related to their handle, so
And you just found them because you were searching certain questions on Google and they came up, or you kind of been following them for quite some time since you became a believer?
I would say the first Christian streamer or content creator that I watched was Gonz. His name's Gonzo. He's done. He's he goes by the channel name Face Like the Sun,
Hmm.
and he has a lot of different contents. He's done documentaries and movies, and he has a podcast that he does every once in a while. And I started off with him, and then somehow I ended up at Mike Hoggard, and I would say he's definitely watching him is what I would say got me saved through his content and actually understanding the Bible and you know just getting to know the Lord through him pretty much, and then that kind of moved me on. All right, well, he only posts so many times a week, and there's sometimes I want to be fed, and I've gone through all his messages, so I started looking for other stuff, and that's I would say when I found Robert Breaker was probably the second one.
Cool. So you're finding these people on your own through internet searches, not necessarily from friends or family that you know.
Correct. Through you guys are the only community I have as far as
Oh.
being able to talk to anyone who's Christian,
Mm-hmm.
and so uh, the only one who really matches with me that I've known that my faith is kind of Jelly, KJV stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look for pastors that mainly do KJV. I've kind of gone outside of that a little bit, but I don't sway very much from that. Like, let me see, what's that guy's name? Discover the Book Ministries. His name, oh geez, I had it on the tip of my tongue there. John Barnett. John Barnett
Okay.
is a guy I watch who's just amazing at explaining history and just kind of he gives a very good outline and is very thorough, and he won't always use the KJV, and he's one of the only people I let slip on something like that.
So obviously you go KJV because you feel that's the most accurate towards the Hebrew and Greek text.
Yes, I feel that it is closest to what was meant to be portrayed to us. For example, that Mike Hoggard guy, through a lot of his videos, he's shown me where, okay, now KJV says this, now let's look at what the other ones say, and it's like a totally different message sometimes. And it's like, well, both of those can't be right.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Oh,
And the one
Jelly
that
just
seems to line up with the message is always the KJV.
didn't mean to interrupt, but Jelly just gave you a gift sub.
Woo, jelly!
Thanks, Jelly. So, all right. So, second question: does many video games involve making choices that are either moral or immoral? Immoral. Immoral. How do you
Immoral.
navigate these choices, and does your faith influence the decisions you make in games?
Well, I would say that, like in RPG games, when you have choices that kind of mold your character and whatnot, even when I was a kid, I would generally go towards the moral path. I didn't like creating the bad guy.
Hmm.
Um, there have only been a couple times to where the game has such choices that I don't even want to make them. Like I remember Grand Theft Auto, there was a situation where you were forced to torture someone and you had to physically like attach a car battery to the guy to torture him, and I was
Oh
like,
my
all right,
gosh.
I'm done with the game. I turned
Yeah.
it off.
Wow. I didn't think that game had that.
Oh, it's
Interesting.
a lot worse than that too at some points.
Yeah, I've heard that game. I mean, I know a lot of pastors use it for reaching out to the lost because obviously a lot of people are playing that who are not believers. And I don't
Well, if
know
you're
how
playing
they.
if you're playing the online, you can do that. But the story
Hmm.
mode is where it's like, ooh, no.
It gets bad, huh? Hmm.
Yep. But yeah, if
Well,
you stick to multiplayer and you're trying to evangelize or whatnot, you could definitely do it without, getting yourself too dirty.
interesting because I see a lot of retired cops play that game and some other people. There was
The
actually
RP community is huge. A lot of people sit there and role play cops and robbers and all that type of stuff, and they'll even have a dispatcher whose sole purpose is to sit there and do call outs for the cops, and they do the codes and all that stuff.
interesting. Not recommended, but if you are reaching out, it might be a good idea.
A lot of
So,
people on there. It's where the people are.
yeah, no, I get it. There's a lot of games out there, so it's like people are everywhere, right? I mean, the last statistic I saw was 3 billion, I think it was 3.3 billion people play video games around the world.
Hmm.
So that's a lot. That's a third of the world population, and it's only growing. I mean, it's been growing, obviously, but they say by 2025, the end of this year, we should be at 3.5 billion. And it
I
is the
wonder.
largest industry in the world.
I wonder if
Encompasses
that
everything.
counts like with a lady playing like Wordle on her phone or something like that. That is she considered a gamer?
I don't know. I haven't gotten into those statistics and how they get to that number, but it's still a lot. And obviously, with
For sure.
COVID, that helped increased a lot of companies, Zoom and anybody that's in the video game world. But it is a big industry. I mean, it encompasses all industries in an entertainment field. It
Absolutely.
dwarfs them, So, unfortunately, those that don't like video games don't understand that. And like you said, that's where the people are. So, we as Christians, should we be part of the world that has non-believers in a video game or in the world where you might be able to find a few here and there? Because a lot of people will not go to a church, right? Because either they got hurt by the church or they got hurt by a family member and they don't want to go to the church.
Or
And
they're in communist
unfortunately,
California.
or they're in Commerce, California, where there's probably no churches that are teaching the
There are a
Bible,
lot
right?
of churches. I just wouldn't consider them churches. I guess probably not a lot of saved people in there.
Really, even the pastors in some Christian, I mean, there's obviously a lot of churches, like you said, and there's a lot of friends that I have in California that go to the churches. So there must be
Well,
some good churches.
I'm not gonna sit here and judge people's hearts and salvation, but
Yeah,
not a lot of them seem good from what I've looked into.
what you've visited.
Yep.
Okay. You don't have to tell where you are in California because that's private information. um, so the third question, have you found any gaming communities that also share your Christian faith? And how do these communities enhance your gaming experience?
So I found this thing called Blessing Boat. It
Ah,
sucks. The ship sunk like 4 times. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, you guys is my gaming community. I mean, sadly, no one really plays with me. But even as you know, I've kind of gotten away from PC gaming for the past few months. But yeah, I definitely Twitch has helped a lot as far as being able to watch Christians while playing games and stuff. And you know, I came to Flat Cap. That's how I met you
hmm.
through Jelly, and I came to those type of communities because I really only had secular friends, and I was getting sick of not talking to anyone about the Lord. So it was really good to be able to find a community that think like me,
Cool.
believe the same things I do.
Yeah, that's good. So you didn't find toxicity through our community.
Nope.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Because if you did, I'm gonna have to figure out who's doing that. But as we grow and as we expand, uh, is the possibility that we're going to get more of those people coming in there, and we just have to figure out how to welcome them, be nice to them, and as long as they don't interrupt, they can watch and
Gotcha,
interact.
for sure.
But yeah, I mean, one of the
That's the church outreach you're talking about doing?
yes, exactly. Because I
I
mean,
see.
obviously, the church denominations, there's many of them out there, and I'm focusing on a few and maybe a few more that I have experienced, you know, in, and I believe they, are true, born again believers. But you never know what happens. I mean, if a youth group really likes this idea and they start inviting all their friends, we could get some interesting people coming in. But we'll see how it goes. You know,
Hmm.
I just think it'll be kind of a unique approach to our 4 year, a little bit different. Plus, we're giving away a nice, Steam Deck or Steam. What is it called?
You are gonna give away a Steam Deck?
Yeah,
Oh,
th-
wow.
that $400 thing.
Yep.
Is that Steam Deck or Stream
Yeah.
Deck? Okay, I
S
get so confused. So Steam Deck, because it's coming from Steam, and Stream Deck is from
Is
a
that little
desktop.
thing with buttons that you
Right,
can switch things to, sources
right.
and all that.
And that's only obviously meant for streamers, not necessarily the general public. So
Right.
the
You can use it for
percentage of
shortcuts,
streamers,
though. It'd be nice to
yeah.
have if someone threw it on my lap.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody have a problem. But and you can get four for the price of one.
Yep.
But when I talked to Dino Dad, I was just thinking, you know, because he is the one that finances Blessing Boat and gives away the T-shirts and games at one point and money at one point, um, it just made sense to keep the money,
To stack
you
it for
know,
a few
exactly
little
second for
while.
4 months and
Yep.
see what happens. So it will be interesting as long as we have the website up and running and it looks good quality, because I don't want to put that out into the public the way it is right now. So
Mhm.
you guys know how much I've struggled to try to get this website to the point where I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I want. Because my design and my first iteration of our website was horrible, but everybody learns as time goes on. All right. So question number 4: how do you handle games that might have themes or content that conflict with your beliefs, like GT5 or 4, 6, or whatever they're there? Are there certain filters or criteria you apply when choosing what games to play?
So we kind of touched on this a little bit. I'd say I'm a little bit more lax on this than some people, like you, for example. I can look past cursing and stuff. If it's all over the place, then yeah, I'm not a huge fan. But if it's sprinkled lightly around the game, then I guess I don't mind it as much. Not that I'll repeat the words or anything like that anyway. So, and I'm an adult, you know. And I'm also one of the people who, was saved later in life. So, kind of been in the world a long time.
Right. You're kind of used to that anyways, and it doesn't bother you.
Yep.
But like you said, you don't go to the excessive extreme of having a video game that has too much swearing in
There,
it or other stuff.
there have been games where it's just excessive, and I'm like, well, what's even the point of this?
Right.
And there's no substance in that.
Yeah. And I know I've caught with that too, especially with what we're doing in Blessing Boat and how we're supposed to be wholesome and stuff. But some of those games, and you got me in, are a lot of fun. Right.
You
But
ended up playing that thing more than I did at the end of it.
I know because it was an adventure, It's kind of like the one that I like the most is Uncharted, but it's really bad, right? I mean, it has
Mm.
a lot of bad themes in it, and there's swearing, and there's other stuff, but it just grabs my attention, just like Laura Croft does, with her
Tomb Raider.
Tomb
Yeah.
Raider stuff. So, but yeah, we each have our own likes in video gaming, and we just got to be careful, obviously, on what we're putting in our minds. Because, and we've talked about this before too. You know, I don't totally believe that it's okay for Christians to play horror games. I just, I don't, because I think horror comes from evil, Satan, and if that gets into your home, it is going to affect you in one way, shape, or form. But that's my thought process. What do you think?
Uh, yeah, I've kind of wondered if, like, even something this might sound ridiculous, but even if like you cast spells in video games and stuff, does that have any impact on anything
Right.
in the real life or the world? I don't know. That's a tough one to answer.
Yeah. And I know some people are adamant about it. They're like, well, if God convicts you of it, then you shouldn't play it. But there are certain things, I mean, just like movies and music, right? You get into it and don't realize that it's something you probably shouldn't be watching or something you should not listening to.
Well, horror games, for example, I was never into those. Like, I don't get scared with scary movies. If they do the jump scares nowadays, yeah, obviously that'll startle me every now and then. But I've never had an interest in the horror movies. I guess when I was super young, I did because it was like, oh, what's this? But
Right.
I got over that pretty quickly. And I would say, kind of in a relation with that, though, is music for me. I was a big metalhead before I
Hmm.
was saved, and you know, talked to a lot of people on Twitch that are into metal and are Christians as well, and they've tried to show me some bands, and even though I'll like the chords and the jug and all that stuff, it just doesn't do it for me like it used to. That's something that God kind of just pruned away from me, it seems like. And like I said, I don't really have an issue with other people listening to it or anything. It doesn't mean I think, oh, you're not saved if you listen to this, but oh, yeah, it's just something that kind of fell off for me.
Hmm. That's cool. Oh, because, and I think we talked about this too, about, Christian heavy metal. What do you think of that?
Well, yeah, like I was saying, I think it's okay if a Christian does listen to Christian heavy metal, and I've had people try and get me into it, but it still just doesn't do it for me like it used to.
Hmm. Interesting.
So I don't
So
know.
even though it has the word of God in it, it doesn't like you want to listen to it like you used to.
Well, and I think this is funny because I don't actually physically go to the church, but for
Hmm.
example, Mike Hogger, the guy that I got saved from, he's a independent Baptist, and they're not too huge on all the singing and having music in there. They'll do it every once in a while. You'll hear them do some hymns, open the hymn book, bust out the piano, and all that. But I'm not into that. I don't know. None of that does it for me. I enjoy uh, watching ukulele every now and then,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just nice to see the community coming together with all that. It's not. I don't know. I don't get that fuzzy feeling that people talk about when the music's playing.
Gotcha. All right. So, question number 5. Are there any spiritual lessons you've learned from gaming that have impacted your walk with Jesus?
Um. Well, I would kind of just say, as far as life lessons, it's like never giving up, uh, going at solutions a different way, trying to look at things from a different perspective, especially if you're in a story driven game. You're trying to kind of get the character's mindset, and you can see a, a perspective of something they're going through that you're not necessarily going through, but you can then apply it to yourself and be like, oh, I can see now what I do in that situation. You
Hmm.
know, as far as impacting my walk with God, I don't know. There aren't too many games, especially nowadays, that really have a good moral backing.
Hmm.
And I feel like we've lost that in media a lot. Like, more games are about demonic stuff than they are about, anything even resembling Christianity,
Right. And I think the reason for that is because, well, number one, a lot of Christians, even though like certain states have a lot of Christians, there's a lot of money that's needed to build these AAA titles. And unfortunately, because the majority of people aren't Christian, you can't make money at it and make a profit, even if you would put in 30, $40 million into a Christian based game,
Right.
right? Because
But that wasn't always the case, though, because, I mean, if you look at the 50s and stuff like that, the majority of the population would claim that they're Christian. And
right.
I think that through TV, media, radio, all of it has been uh, the enemy kind of sowing seeds to push Christianity out and ask for a secular world.
hmm And like
And I
I've always
think it's
heard,
only getting worse.
yeah, I think what I heard too, and I think this is exactly what's happening in this society, especially around Christian thoughts and what they watch and what they do, is we are like, and I hate to use this example, but it's the best to use. We're lobsters, right? We don't know when we're getting cooked because
Ah,
it's
the
so
frog
familiar.
boiling water
Yeah,
type of
frog
thing.
or lobster. Yeah. I heard in lobster, I haven't really heard the frog part, but I'm sure it's the same, right? Because
Hmm.
you are in water that you're used to. You take it into a pot. The lobster at least doesn't realize nothing's happening until start you putting up the heat, right? And then all of
Yep.
a sudden you boil and you're
Until
dead.
he's red and ready to eat.
Exactly. Not saying that's a bad thing for us humans, but that's exactly what's happening, I think, into the world is that Satan is so good at allowing us to think what we're doing is okay. What we're doing is not going to affect our spiritual lives. But I really do believe that a lot of stuff that we put into our mind will come out eventually, you know, and it's not going to be a good thing. So when people say they can kind of separate themselves from a video game and themselves, maybe, but I still think there's a lot of stuff that emotionally in, your mind subconsciously does go in there and it does affect you eventually. But that's not why we're here
Absolutely.
for. um, all right, so number 6, in what ways have you found opportunities to share your faith with others through video gaming?
Well, I would say the Blessing Boat is a good example of that, and your guys' community. And I've definitely noticed more that even with my secular friends that I had before I met you guys, I bring up my faith a lot more. It's made me more comfortable with, being open about it. I've never been afraid to share what I think, but I guess I never looked for opportunities to. And the more I've been practicing it, it's a lot easier to just bring topics up that will relate to a book in the Bible that I think of, or a passage, or a lesson from there, and share with my friends. And surprisingly, since they've known me for some of them, 10 plus years, they're not going to tell me to shut up or anything. So,
Right. So they're open.
yep,
Oh, that's good.
they're
So
not open to like converting or anything, or even reading the Bible, but they'll hear me talk about it.
right, and they'll have healthy discussions around it,
Yep.
not necessarily arguments, but actual discussion.
Oh, I love debates.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just like we
So,
debated this morning.
so I'm always down for that.
Yeah, you have that personality.
Yep.
Um, well, that's good because obviously we are told in the Bible that we need to do that. And I think even with what we have with Blessing Boat, I think we do it to a certain extent, especially having a whole bunch of different streamers in all day long. But I think personally for myself, I don't do it enough like I used to. And I think I need to change that. So
Got to get
anybody
back
want
to it.
prayer? Yeah, anybody want to pray for me on that? Because I used to be evangelistic when I was back in the U.S. I mean, I would use tracts to, give to my friends and start discussions about Jesus, and I think I haven't done that enough. But I think the challenge for me, number one, is I'm old. Number two is I don't see people face to face, right? When you see somebody face to face, it's a little easier. When you don't, when you just see a number on your screen, uh, it for me it doesn't connect a person, even though it is a person behind it watching. It just doesn't. It doesn't feel the same.
Well,
So
I'm the opposite.
really,
Yeah, I'm kind of quiet and in real life, in person.
so you haven't really gone out trying to witness to
Evangelize in
others,
person?
right?
No, I'll drop like I'll drop hints with the bless you, or even just uh you know pray for someone even in the moment, in my
Hmm.
head. But I've never really been trying to witness to someone in person, except
Okay,
one person. But I know him, and he came over. So
right. No, because I, was part of um, Campus Crusade for Christ, which now is, I guess, called Crew, and we had back in the '80s called the Rocky Mountain Getaway, and we would go to Estes Park, Colorado, which is absolutely beautiful. If you ever want to take a cool trip, that's where
probably
you want
too
to
cold
go.
there for me.
No, it wasn't cold at all. Not compared to where I live in Minnesota.
That's cold too.
Colorado's nice. Um, but anyways, we were actually, as students, we learned how to go out and talk to people on the street. And it was an eye-opening experience because we used, the four spiritual laws, which is the track. Some people don't believe in that, but I think it was really eye-opening for us to saying, you know, we can do this. It's just that we're scared to do so. And I know a lot of people say, well, you got to build the relationship before they become a Christian. I do believe that too. But I think if everybody, you know, like you were saying this morning, right? Everybody has an effect on one person, they will eventually lead themselves to Christ if, it's done correctly. So,
Yeah, I don't think you can necessarily beat it into someone.
right. No,
and
they
but
have to make their own decision.
Also, I do think that there is a problem with that kind of street evangelism where someone might read into it, but if you don't give them a place to go after,
Right.
they're not going to have any of their questions answered. Um, when I was growing up, I told you about him before. I had a buddy played baseball and was my neighbor growing up,
Hmm.
and he was my Christian influence growing up. And he tried to get me saved and whatnot. Whenever I'd ask him questions, he'd kind of just brush me off, and we'd continue what we were doing. And so I was like, oh, well, what's the point? Why would I? You want me to believe in this, but then when I ask about it, you don't even answer me. So I don't know. I do
Interesting.
think that's an issue, and also in the Bible, it says that when someone would get saved, that I don't, I can't tell you off the top of my head exactly where this is, but that they would have these house churches, and they wouldn't go out for months being able to evangelize unless they were totally sure they had their apologetics down. They actually
Right.
knew how to answer stuff.
Yeah.
So I do think a lot of times today they'll send out someone who very well could be saved, have uh, the Holy Ghost living inside them, but they don't necessarily have the apologetics down and can't even, you know, uh, not argue their way out of a cardboard box, but be able to defend their faith
Right.
well enough.
No, and I get that too. I mean, even though I've been a Christian since, like I said, 14 years old, if I ran into somebody who's a lot more smarter theologically in the Bible than I am, it becomes a challenge. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also think by going out there in faith, God's going to show you people that He wants you to talk to. And I
And
think in the real life, it's easier than digital.
no way, it's the opposite
Really
for me.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm an introvert though. But I will say this too, and I'm not saying this about blessing, but necessarily, but a lot of Christian streamers, if I just like bring up a topic or a faith question,
Hmm.
it seems like the streamers generally, if they don't bring it up, they don't want to answer because they don't want to get into a discussion that might be against someone's denomination or this or that. And it's just I want their opinion on it. It's not like I'm saying here this is the right way, and if you think something different than this, you're wrong. But you know,
Right.
I think it's interesting that a lot of streamers, even some pastor ones, you'll bring up something and they'll kind of just brush it off and not really want to get into it because they don't want to ruffle feathers. And it's like, well, you know, sometimes you have to ruffle feathers.
Right. No, I agree. I think I think they probably look at it going, well, if we start answering this question, it could open up Pandora's box, and the stream will go a different way than what they planned. And I
Right. Yeah.
think,
You're not trying to tank the stream or anything.
right, exactly. And I think that's why Discord is so important, that, if they have the time to get back together with you, to be able to type or be able to have the conversation like we're having now without obviously being live, to be able to help. But not everybody's open to that, which is like, well, isn't that what we're supposed to
Yeah. Exactly.
do?
That's my
So,
thought at least.
yeah. Um, numbers, let's see,
7.
7. Thank you. Perceptions. Oops, I wasn't supposed to say that. How do you respond to the perception that video games might be a distraction or even contradictory to living a Christ-centered life?
Well, I think we touched on this a little bit. That's where the people are that you can go out to and reach. I mean, if you're walking around town, it might be harder to have something in common with someone to be able to relate that to them and even have a long enough conversation to reach them. And if you're both sitting down, beating level 18, you can sit there and talk about anything.
Right. It's
And contradictory, yeah, as we said, there's a lot of content in games that contradict a Christian life. But that would be the question of is what you're doing, once again, like I was talking about with the magic spells and whatnot, is what you're doing in a video game actually, it's not real life, right? So
right.
you're not actually doing those things.
Yeah.
But then one could argue, as God said, if you do it in your heart, then you've done it. If you do it in your mind, then you've done it in your heart. So who knows?
Yeah.
Have
I
I
know.
killed 1 million orcs and it's counting against me? I hope not.
Right. And it's even worse when you're playing, like, and I'm not going to name the names, but against human opponents. But unfortunately, that's what I like the most when we do those type of
You like the
adventures.
realistic ones. You
I
don't you
do.
don't like the fantasy stuff.
Right. And I don't know why that is. And that's sad, in one way, because even though we're killing digits and zeros and O's, um, I don't know. It's just the first time I saw a Christian playing this, and this was like 4 years ago before I got into Twitch, and I was interviewing actually Christian streamers, and I see a lot of them playing those type of games. I'm like, I was kind of like, are you guys leading people astray by playing that? And that was my thought process. But then
Right.
as I started getting to know them and seeing their hearts and seeing why they chose that game as a reach out, then I'm like, well, I can accept that to a certain degree. Because there's still some people that playing games. I mean, okay, one example, and this was obviously a very big video game back in the 80s, Mortal Kombat, right? It was a horrible game, but so many people gravitated to it. And now, with all the fancy graphics and stuff, the new one is
Oh,
horrible.
it's a million times worse now. The fatalities are
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
And
And
they go over the top like on purpose 10 times more than they used to. And even when I was a kid, I thought that game was a little too gory even for me, and no one was telling me not to play it or anything. So I chose to play Street Fighter over Mortal Kombat for sure.
Right.
Kind of get the same thing through it without all the blood and ridiculousness.
Yeah. So, number 8, do you set any limits on yourself regarding gaming time or content in order to keep your spiritual life prioritized?
Absolutely not. As I said, I'm usually listening to stuff while I'm playing games. So,
Mm. No, but
um, and I don't have a family life like you, so I don't really have anyone to answer to.
sure. Oh God.
Yep.
No, that's interesting. I mean, I like what you're saying, and I might even apply that um, when I'm playing video games, if I'm not live, is to, listen to sermons. That's a
Yep.
great idea. It's kind of hard when you're playing and being live at the same time, trying to
I did
listen to
that once,
something
but
else.
obviously I didn't have much of an audience, so I didn't have to respond and pay attention to that much.
Right.
But
'Cause
yeah, I
obviously,
streamed before while having a sermon on in the background.
yeah, because I noticed a lot of people, obviously, who are lurking, they're playing another video game while they're watching,
Yep.
but they're not really watching, they're just hearing. And then I see some people, I'm not going to name the names, that have like 10 people that they're modding at the same time. And I'm like,
Wonder who that could be.
no, we're not talking about that particular person. We're talking about somebody else that I heard. But
So I get crazy though. Sometimes I'll be listening to music while having a sermon on, while watching one of you guys on Twitch while playing a video game. That's what I was doing back in the day.
wow. So it's not just female characteristics. Multitasking.
Multitasking? Oh, definitely not. That's why I got
That's
the three
interesting.
monitors, man.
Yeah,
Can't live
that
without it.
helps.
But
I guess.
also, the music I listen to when I'm playing games is kind of like lo-fi hip hop, so there's generally not lyrics, so
Right.
that's not as distracting. It's like elevator music, but more contemporary.
Well, it's something that you choose, so it's not necessarily in from the video game itself.
Yeah, I always turn in-game music all the way off.
Hmm.
Their choices are poor, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, because when I'm doing American Trucker, you can actually get radio from the internet, and so
Yeah,
they have all
you
these
can do
radio
that with
stations.
you can do that with Assetto too. I should show
Yeah,
you some of the cars that do that, and they even have the touchscreen buttons. You can search YouTube on the dash screen. It's
on
pretty
the
crazy.
dash screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to I think it was a Setta Corsa, and I accidentally had it on, and I didn't realize it was on. It was very low because I usually was listening to Christian talk radio because I didn't think I would get, copyright strike on it.
Copyright. Yeah.
But I did get a
Uh-oh.
copyright strike. But the funny thing is, they didn't hold to it because it said, your video will be muted. But then when I went back into my
The
back
audio is still
office,
there?
I didn't check the audio, but it says you have X amount of strikes against you. It was 0. So it's like
Oh,
maybe they didn't count it because it was the first offense. I don't know.
interesting.
But I'm glad because I didn't even hear it because it was very low muted. But I learned my lesson. I'm like, this is the first time that's ever happened.
Oh, something random, but did you claim the F1 game?
I did. I did. Is that
And
multiplayer?
I don't know. I haven't tried it yet. And
Okay.
Driven, if you're listening, go grab it.
So I I don't. Oh, you're not part of the Discord group, but remember that place I told you about here that has the Amazon, not rejects. Well, I don't know. Is it rejects that people send back to Amazon and they can't sell it because they don't want to repackage it? They sell
Oh,
them in like
okay.
huge boxes and stuff. Well, we
All
have a
right.
store here, and I just went there today, and it was kind of crazy because they're at the highest level, which is like $40 for every item in the store, and some of the stuff are like, I don't know, worth $40. But one thing I saw, which was interesting, and it just kind of popped out as I was walking down the aisle. I'm looking, you know, and it's like all these like lamps and home decoration stuff. I see this big green, you won't believe it, gas guzzle that you use for gas stations, right? To fill your car.
Like at the nozzle?
Yeah, it's a nozzle.
Huh.
And it was actually like something you could buy. So I took a picture of it and I sent it to Cross Driven Racing. I said, "This should be our trophy
Oh
for the
goodness.
end of the year." But I wasn't going to pay $40 for it, so I might go back when it goes to like 15. If it's still there, I'm gonna go get it.
Is it big?
It is. And it's heavy too. It's just
Oh,
weird. I'll show it to you because you'd be
shipping would
like,
not be fun for that.
"Well, no, I don't need to ship it because it's there, right? They have the store, so I just pick it up.
Oh,
They
gotcha.
pay for that,
Yeah, but I meant if you're giving it to a trophy of someone who won,
Oh, I see
actually
what you're
give
saying.
it to
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. I didn't think of that part. It's not too heavy though. I mean, it's not like 20 pounds or anything, but it is pretty, weighty. But it was very interesting to see it there. I'm like, who would order that? And is that even available on Amazon? It must be.
Real question is, does it work?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. I don't think you could put a hose on it, run gas through it, but it was interesting. Anyways, I digress. All right. Well, we had a great interview with you. I really
You?
appreciate your
Thank you.
time. Thank you for setting up all the audio and all the fun stuff I have to do
Yep.
before the
Glad it
stream.
worked.
Is there anything that you want to say to everybody, or
Miss you guys. I don't come on Twitch very often anymore. Doing my own thing, mobile gaming. Hit me up on Discord if you see me.
there you go.
That's about it.
All right. And you want
And God bless you.
do you want us to put you in the Discord to let people know how to contact you through Discord?
Oh, I've missed you too, Jelly. Yeah, my name's always available for anyone.
Okay. I'll probably put that up. So, and you've helped me so much with Discord too, and so many things. So, anyways, let's say goodbye to Shag. He is awesome.
Bye, Shag.
Have a good night. Talk to you
Good
later.
night.
God bless. Oh, well, let's end in prayer here. Lord, I thank you. I thank you for Shaggy. I thank you for his life. I thank you for everything that he's gone through and how much he realizes how that he needed you 7 years ago. I thank you for bringing him into this community, allowing him to become a friend of mine and be able to have almost a sounding board. You give him a lot of information and he obviously absorbs everything, and he even helps challenge me in many different areas. So I just thank you for his friendship. I thank you for the community that he's been part of. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
My name is Warrior, if you don't know that already. I am a Christian variety streamer. We usually do streams Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but that's changed. So right now it's only Tuesday officially, and we'll do a Bible study. And then it's kind of in the air when I go. So if you get my email or subscribe, you'll be able to see that when I go live. Anyways, I have a good friend of mine that I'm going to interview tonight. His name, you want to give your name?
My name is Shag, also known as Onesimus Prime.
There you go. Onesimus Prime. Now, he has been introduced to me by